Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. In this video, we're going to cover this article, among other things. 46 volcanoes are erupting right now. What that means for us. Iceland is currently bracing for an eruption that could occur any day now. So we're going to be talking about volcanoes because this has really been a topic that's kind of flared up on X and other places. People are getting really excited about volcanoes. And I needed to see for myself what is going on here. You know, is this true? I need to get it all down. So I did a live stream earlier today, which I may do other live streams like this where if I'm going through some monotonous task, I'll start up a live stream and kind of do my work as I chat with you. But essentially, that's what I was doing today. Was trying to get to the bottom of this because I read this article. And people on social media are like, whoa, something is going on right now. There's all these volcanoes that are erupting. And the experts are saying, no, this is normal. By the way, I got this particular article from Sheila Fisher, where she gives me the link for the article that we're going to cover. So thank you, Sheila, for sending that. And I wanted to find out for myself, see if I could get to the bottom of it. So that's what we're going to do. Before we get into that, I have a few other items of business to share with you. First, I've updated the Flood the Earth challenge. We're now at 7,263, getting close to 7,300, and ultimately closer to 10,000, which is the goal. 3 new people have joined the challenge, which brings us to a total of 769 that have joined this challenge. To do so, all you have to do, share a Book of Mormon, use the Gospel Library app to send a link to your friends for the Book of Mormon app. Or send it, or share it the traditional way, and then just let me know. Put it in the comments or send me an email. Include this word right here, #flood. Include that in your comment or in your email, and keep the email short and the comment short, so that as I'm going through adding all these things up, I can just quickly update the tracker. Please, it makes it simpler. And then we also have some news here where Cabria, she says that 2 of her people, it's a couple, have started meeting with the missionaries, which brings us to a total of 96 people that have been reported as meeting with the missionaries. So for the month of November, we're now at 4 people that have met with the missionaries. So good job, Cabria, and everybody else, keep it up. Okay, before we get to volcanoes, this came up today. I got this email from Grant Polsander letting me know that according to this, Jeffrey R. Holland, new acting president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, which shouldn't be too much of a surprise. We talked about this before, how it goes. If we go to my spreadsheet right here for all the, essentially all the presidents of the church and then all the current apostles and members of the first presidency, you'll remember that it goes according to seniority, essentially. So the way that it works is that the president of the church is the senior apostle. That's what determines who becomes president of the church. And then after him, in the number 2 spot, the next most senior apostle, that's the person that is the president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. It's currently Dallin H. Oaks. Okay, you see right here the seniority in this column, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, starts with, I have President Nelson up here with the prophets. But then down here, Dallin H. Oaks is the next one in line as far as seniority goes. Okay. Seniority is determined by how long you've been in the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. So he is the president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, but he's in the first presidency. So if you're in the first presidency, then you have essentially the next most senior person that's not in the first presidency as the acting president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. And that's what M. Russell Ballard was. Okay. He recently passed away, as you know. And so the next one in line is Jeffrey R. Holland. He's the next most senior after I'm gonna take President Ballard off here. It's still a little bit too soon. But he is the next most senior after President Oaks, and he's not in the first presidency. Therefore, he is the acting president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. So let's go over here. Let's read what it says. The first presidency released the following statement on Thursday, November 16th, 2023. So that was yesterday, and I didn't see this until today, thanks to Grant. Jeffrey R. Holland has been called to serve as acting president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He received the official appointment and was set apart by Church President Russell M. Nelson on November 15th, 2023. So the 15th, that was Wednesday. He was set apart on Wednesday, succeeding the late acting president M. Russell Ballard, who died on November 12th, 2023. Okay, so 3 days later. I don't know if there's that's like a standard or a convention or, why it's not just like immediately after. I guess it doesn't have to be immediately after. They give some time because, someone just passed away. Maybe it's nothing more than that. But whatever the case, it was 3 days after he passed away. That's when Jeffrey R. Holland was set apart as the acting president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. And then continuing, the Quorum of the 12 Apostles is the second highest presiding body in the government of the church. In addition to their primary responsibility to be special witnesses of the name of Christ throughout the world, these apostles have significant administrative responsibilities in overseeing the operation and development of a global church. Just for example, we recently covered this, how normally you have two apostles that do the mission calls. Because of the recent surge in missionaries, there's been times where they've had four that have been working on issuing mission calls. So that's like one of the things that they do among many, many other things. There's different committees in the church and stuff like that. Okay. They serve under the direction of the first presidency, which includes the church president and two counselors. It is the church's practice that the senior member, by date of assignment to the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, becomes quorum president. President Holland, like President Ballard before him, is designated acting president because President Dallin H. Oaks, who is senior apostle in service, currently serves as first counselor in the first presidency. Okay. So that happened. Okay, here we go. I don't really want to... I guess maybe I'll do it after this video. I'll take M. Russell Ballard off here. So this will be the last time that we have him up on this spreadsheet. And we'll wait and anticipate who... we'll wait for the next apostle to be called, which will be the most junior apostle once he is. And that should take place in April. So that will be interesting. I want to remind you, out of all the apostles right now, there are only two that were not a general authority before they were called. And they are David A. Bednar. He was president of BYU, Idaho. And then President Oaks. At the time, he was a justice of the Utah Supreme Court. So everybody else was a general authority before, primarily from the presidency of the 70, but there are a couple that were in the quorum of the 70, including Jeffrey R. Holland. And then we have Elder Gary E. Stevenson, who was presiding bishop. So that's just to give you an idea where the next apostle could come from. We'll just have to wait and see. All right. And then as far as age goes, I have this spreadsheet where I'm keeping track of the age of the first presidency primarily throughout the years whenever there's a change to the first presidency. And you may recall, this is the oldest first presidency that we've ever had. Everybody is in their 90s, which is why I have it colored in red. These three red boxes here: President Nelson, Oaks, and Eyring, all in their 90s. And when President Ballard was still alive, he was also in his 90s. And he was the acting president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. So that's going to be, I'm going to update this and replace him with Jeffrey R. Holland. Jeffrey R. Holland is in his 80s. He is about to turn 83 years old. It looks like next month probably, or later this month. I'm not sure. When's his birthday? Okay, on December 3rd, he's going to turn 83 years old. So this will no longer be red across the board, but it will be among the first presidency down here. Okay. Okay. By the way, President Ballard's funeral was today. I don't know if it was on YouTube. People were saying, like, as I was counting volcanoes, his funeral services began, and people were saying that they were going to go watch that. So I haven't checked myself, but if you want to watch that, you might look on YouTube. I wouldn't be surprised if it was put on YouTube. But anyway, and someone who had been watching it, I guess at the same time that they were watching me, or maybe afterwards, told me that Elder Holland said in the services that he had come really close to death when he was hospitalized, this most recent time that he was hospitalized. So I didn't realize it was that serious, that he was like close to death, but that's what somebody said in the chat as I was doing the live stream. If you picked out anything interesting from the funeral, please let me know. Send me an email, ideally, and put, funeral services in the subject line if you feel like there was anything noteworthy that everybody else would like to hear. But I thought that was interesting. Okay, now we're working our way toward talking about volcanoes. Still have a few other things. I wanted to bring this up from Anonymous. The subject line is 3.5. And Anonymous says, Jared, in this week's Come Follow Me, we are reading the book of James. He makes reference to 3.5 that helps us to understand it should not be treated as an exact number. Now, this is interesting because this is kind of like I don't want to say a divisive issue, but there's kind of different schools of thought when it comes to these different numbers, whether it's 42 months or 1,260 days, 1,290 days, 1,335 days, so on and so forth. I know that right now a lot of people are very excited about Daniel. I think it's Daniel chapter 12. It's the last chapter where he talks about the 1,290 days. Yeah, I think it's 1,290 days. And how from the time that the temples were closed because of the pandemic until now, or until the war started in Israel, it was 1,290 days. And I'm not going to discount that. I think, yeah, that could be it. I'm not going to go as far as to say that that's the fulfillment of that prophecy. It could be, but it also may not be. I tend to lean toward the interpretation that these numbers are not meant to be specific time frames, but it's a symbolic number, as we've studied before. We've studied it in the Institute manuals, where because it's half of 7, it's essentially symbolically a representation of being in a state of arrested development, not having made it all the way to 7, which is the number of perfection and completeness. And that has been understood to mean a time when Satan is in power, when there's apostasy, because it's half of 7. So it's like, 3.5. So, but until somebody in authority says one way or the other, I'm going to keep my mind open to either way, but I kind of tend more to think that it's symbolic. But anyway, according to Anonymous, they say in chapter 5, verse 17, we read, Elijah, was a man subject to like passions as we are, and he prayed earnestly that it might not rain, and it rained not on the earth by the space of 3 years and 6 months. Okay, so there you go. 3.5 years. 3 years, 6 months. If we go to 1 Kings 18:1, we learn about the ending of the drought. And it came to pass after many days that the word of the Lord came to Elijah in the 3rd year, saying, Go, show yourself unto Ahab, and I will send rain upon the earth. So here it just talks about 3 years, not 3.5 years. And then the email continues. As you've been saying about President Nelson, he's in his 100th ordinal number year and his 99th cardinal number years old. Again, I repeat this just for anyone that's new. I have a hard time with this. I always have been. What this is referring to is the fact that, yes, right now he's 99 years old, but he is in the 100th year of his life. When you are born, you are in the 1st year of your life. Once you turn 1 year old, you are now entering the 2nd year of your life. So therefore, President Nelson is 99, but he's in his 100th year of life. Okay, so continue with the email. So if the Lord came to Elijah in the 3rd ordinal year, that means 2 cardinal years had passed, but it had not reached 3 years yet, let alone 3.5. So that's an interesting insight. That is a very interesting insight. So it means that when you're reading in James, it says 3.5, but they may be saying that in the symbolic way, like a time of apostasy, rebellion, stuff like that. We know that in the scriptures, the number 3.5, or sometimes represented as 1,260 days or years, or 40, or 42 months, or time times and a half, is half of the number 7, representing completion of perfection, and refers to a limited period of tribulation during which evil forces are allowed to do their work. There is imperfection and apostasy, but evil's time is bounded and its limits are set. See New Testament Student Manual. Okay, so yeah, the Anonymous is copying and pasting this from the Student Manual. It is not an exact number. I thought it might be useful to have another example. Thanks for all you do, Anonymous. I'll probably bring this up again and put it in a playlist. I may make a playlist about numbers, but I'm going to remember this one. So thank you, Anonymous, for sending that. And I think that you're right. For all of you that think that, Daniel's prophecy has been fulfilled, I'm not going to say that it hasn't. I'm not in a position of authority to say one way or the other. So we just have to watch. I will say, though, there have been a lot of people sending this to me. You don't need to send it anymore. I know. I know about it. I've known about it since the day of the war, but I keep getting messages and emails, and I know about it. So thank you. I know about it. Okay. Now, let's talk just a little bit about Israel before we move on to volcanoes. So according to the War Mapper account, which they seem to be pretty accurate when you compare them to the Institute for the Study of War, they generally come up with the same maps. So I feel like this is accurate enough. This is the progress of the war with Hamas. And this is the northern part of the Gaza Strip. And you can see here, according to this update, this post is dated today, November 17th. According to this update, the Shifa Hospital, which is the main command center for Hamas, it is now deep within blue territory, or I should say ground or area that Israel has captured and is operating in. Okay, so all the blue right here obviously represents the advances of the IDF. Okay, and they completely have this main population area surrounded. This is Gaza City and Jabalia and some other places. So this is where we're at. And these arrows, they're pointing in toward the city. So it looks like they're, starting to clear the city and go through and find all the Hamas operatives. So very interesting. Again, we don't know what's going to happen. I was thinking that maybe things would escalate once the ground invasion started, but they kind of really haven't. So I feel like maybe the next threshold, if things are to escalate as far as more people joining the war, would be possibly once this northern section of the Gaza Strip is cleared and completely cleared by the military, or it may be once they go through the entire Gaza Strip. I don't know. We talked to Rabbi Gerfein just a couple weeks ago, and he was of the opinion that Gaza and Hamas are just a pawn and that there's more phases to come, but we'll just have to wait and see. Earlier today, I saw the largest rocket attack in a while. It was a 13-line rocket attack, meaning if you count these lines right here, 1, 2, 3, that's how I compare rocket attack to a rocket attack. This was on the larger side. And this is what it looked like. It was the Tel Aviv area and a little bit north and a little bit south, and a little bit east of Tel Aviv. So it was a sizable attack. I was kind of surprised because, like I said, it's been a while since I've seen an attack that large. Nowadays, it seems like most of the attacks are kind of they look something like this instead, where you just see a couple a couple towns. Like this one is Sterot, Ibim, and near So you can see the difference. This is really small and this is really big. So I'm kind of surprised that they're still able to launch those kind of attacks, but I don't know how many rockets they have in the Gaza Strip, like south. Well, maybe even still in the north. I don't know. But like south of where operations are currently taking place. I have no idea. But they've been firing so many rockets. Even if the ground invasion hadn't taken place, like at some point you have to run out of rockets. How many are there? I don't know. Maybe we'll find out. Okay. So at this point, we're going to start talking about volcanoes. We're going to be talking about 2004, again, the year 2004. And I'll show you why. So again, this is from Sheila Fisher. I think it's Sheila, probably not Shayla, Sheila Fisher. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. So let's start talking about, is something really weird going on right now? Are there a lot of volcanoes that are erupting? Let's read some of this, and then I'll show you what I found. Okay. So as a refresher, 46 volcanoes are erupting right now. What that means for us. Okay. This is from Best Life Online. I've never heard of this site before, but let's run with it. The thought of any volcanic eruption is a bit unsettling, but thankfully that's not something that's likely crosses your mind on a daily basis. Recently, however, there's been somewhat constant chatter about volcanoes, which has many nerves rattled. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, between 50 and 60 volcanoes erupt each year, averaging about one per week. Right now, there are 46 volcanoes erupting, with experts citing reports of even more volcanic activity. Read on to find out what that means for us. Okay. According to data published by the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History Global Volcanism Program, as of October 11th, there were 46 ongoing eruptions across the world. And per a list of new volcanic activity published last week, 3 more volcanoes could soon cause trouble. As first reported by Newsweek, new additions to the weekly volcanic activity report. Keep this in mind. This is going to be important. The WVAR, the Wvar, okay, we'll call it the Wvar, include an underwater volcano off the coast of Iwo Jima, Kyoto, Japan, Klyuchevskoye, and a stratovolcano, one with a more cone-like shape in central Kamchatka, Russia, and a volcano on the Reykjanes Peninsula in Iceland. And this is the one that we've been looking at, this Iceland volcano. Currently, residents in Iceland are bracing for an impending eruption following hundreds of small earthquakes, Time reported. A small fishing town, Grindavik, has already been evacuated due to resultant cracks in the earth that cut across roadways and under buildings. And we've looked at that before. Here's a new video. This is from Wvar Monitoro. A huge crack through the city center. And you can see steam coming out, and it's a very upsetting situation. Where is that? Let me pull up Google Earth just as a reminder. So again, we're talking about, excuse me, we're talking about Iceland. And I have this yellow place mark to indicate that the town was evacuated. We've seen this one other time this year with Yellowknife in Canada, in Northwest Territories. That was a much larger evacuation. That was 20,000 people. This one was more like 3,300 people, which is still quite a bit. But this is the area right here in question. Okay? And it doesn't, we're still, just really quick, let's talk about this volcano just really quick before we get back to that article. Looming volcano eruption in Iceland leaves evacuated small town in limbo. The lava is under our house. That's something that you never want to have to say in your lifetime. Thousands of earthquakes have struck Iceland this week as researchers found evidence that magma is rising to the ground surface, prompting fears that a volcanic explosion could occur anytime on the Reykjanes Peninsula. One small town made famous for the beloved Blue Lagoon has been evacuated, and now residents say they're stuck in limbo as they await the fate of their homes. Quote, "It's like sitting in a very boring movie, but you're stuck there. You can't get out of it," Einar Dagbjartsson told Reuters. "It's unreal. It's hard to digest." Meteorologists in the country have been warning for days that a volcanic eruption could happen at any moment. More than 700 earthquakes overnight on Tuesday, and another 800 within roughly 6 hours early Wednesday morning. And according to the Icelandic Met Office, hundreds more have transpired since. Between Wednesday and Friday, the office has recorded more than 800 additional earthquakes, most of which were minor. The office also detected sulfur dioxide earlier this week. Now, this is new to me. I didn't know this. An indicator that magma is getting closer to the surface and that a volcanic eruption will likely occur. Quote, "The likelihood of an eruption remains high," meteorologists said in their latest update on Tuesday. Looks like this is that same police officer. You see the guy here? He has a white beard, about the same length. I think it's the same guy. Okay, so we're waiting for that to happen, and it seems like that's all but certain that it will. Okay, these volcanoes are in addition to 16 other erupting volcanoes labeled as quote-unquote continuing on the Wvar for the week of November 1st through November 7th. The website also notes that the Wvar doesn't include all eruptions. Only volcanic activity that meet certain criteria, including the release of a volcanic ash advisory, observed significant change in volcanic activity, a raised or lowered alert level at the volcano, or a verifiable news report or new activity or change in activity. I'll explain that in just a little bit. It's basically, that's just like the criteria for what they have on the Wvar, the eruption report, basically. Per the Smithsonian, the Wvar averages about 16 volcanoes per week and provides information about newer eruptions. The complete list of current eruptions is updated every 6 to 8 weeks. While nearly 50 ongoing volcanic eruptions may seem abnormal and worrisome, according to experts, it's not anything to be overly concerned about. Okay, so here comes the experts. PSA. Okay, quote, PSA. Volcanoes are erupting all the time, all over the world. That's normal. Well, okay. I don't think anybody's questioning that. It's the number that are erupting, but okay. That's what Earth's volcanoes do. They erupt. Volcanologist and science journalist Robin George Andrews, PhD, volcanologist and science journalist, wrote on X. Continuing, and there's enough of them that some will always be erupting at the same time. You know what would be weird? If absolutely no volcanoes were erupting. Okay, well, yeah, that would be weird. No one's freaking out over the fact that there are volcanoes erupting at the same time. I think that's general knowledge. Most people would assume that you have multiple volcanoes going off at the same time. It's the number. It's the number that's going off at the same time. So I don't find that tweet or that post very helpful. The next one, speaking with Newsweek, Ben Andrews, PhD, research geologist and global volcanism program director, added that the number of erupting volcanoes isn't out of the ordinary either. Quote, "The number of volcanoes erupting right now is normal," he told the outlet. There are currently 46 ongoing eruptions, and over the past 30 years, there have generally been about 40 to 50 eruptions happening at any given time. Now, this is where I have some questions, and I'm going to show you what I found. There's one thing that I could be off on. I'm not sure. But there's a couple other things that I'm not, and I know that for sure. And I'll show you. Since 1991, there have been between 56 and 88 eruptions each year. Okay, again, sir, no one is focusing on how many eruptions are happening in the year total. What people are concerned about right now is how many are erupting right now. Not all year long, right now. So this is why it's like, do they even understand what people are talking about? Since 1991, there have been between 56 and 88 eruptions each year. Okay, that doesn't matter. 67 eruptions have happened thus far this year. Still doesn't matter. And there were 85 in 2022. Okay, none of that is applicable to what people are talking about. Another X user pointed out that social media trends could be sparking fears as well. Quote, there are always volcanoes erupting in the world. Okay, no one's disputing that. Nothing new. Everybody already knows. Only social media attention is new, they wrote. And I don't know about that. So I don't care too much for the dismissiveness of these experts, not even addressing what the actual concern is and what people are talking about. So let me show you what people are talking about. Okay, so I went to this Smithsonian website. Smithsonian Institute, National Museum of Natural History, Global Volcanism Program. Here it is, okay? It says, excuse me, overall, 46 volcanoes were in continuing eruption status as of the 11th of October, 2023. Okay, so people are looking at that number. And I just realized that, you know, we are now in November. And so I was like, whoa, 46, because I thought it was talking about this month. So when I was doing the live stream, I missed that little detail that that's talking about a completely different month. So what you have here, okay, is you have like, I guess their total eruptions since as of the 11th of October. And so this list right here has the 46 erupting volcanoes. Okay. And the ones that were on the most recent report, excuse me, the ones that were on the most recent report have this yes in this column right here. Remember the Wvar? The Wvar stands for Weekly Volcanic Activity Report. So they do a weekly report. And here you have it right here. So if it has yes in this column, these entries were from the last week. And I guess everything else is from the last time that they did this like overall report. I'm still a little bit confused on that, but it says complete updates are done every 6 to 8 weeks. Oh my gosh. Gosh. So my best understanding of it right now is that this right here, this report that came out last month on the 11th of October, this kind of report is put out every 6 to 8 weeks. Now, this is something I didn't really realize earlier when I was doing the live stream. So what I did is I put together a spreadsheet tracking the Wvars, the weekly reports, okay, and how many volcanoes are being reported as new or continuing with their eruptions every week, okay? So the mistake I made is this right here. This is not correct, this 46. In the live stream, I was saying it was correct. This is the cumulative number of volcanoes across a 6 to 8 week time frame. So this is no longer valid. Okay, so I'm taking that off. The most recent report had 19. It had 19 eruptions. Okay. I'll get rid of this too. I've got to revise that. Okay. So now things are a little bit more clear. Now, how did I do this? Well, some of you saw it when I was doing the live stream. What you can do is you can come here and we're looking at the weekly volcanic activity report. See, it has all the volcanoes going off between the 8th of November. See, I almost did it again. The 8th of November to the 14th of November. Okay. And then another one will come out next Wednesday. So the most recent report, the one that we were just looking at, there were 19 eruptions. Okay. For that week, opposed to this report that goes back 6 to 8 weeks. So in this article, when the guy is saying that it's normal for their, let's see, where did he say that? Right here. Over the past 30 years, there have generally been about 40 to 50 eruptions happening at any given time. So I don't know if that's what he's referring to. Like when he says any given time, is he talking about these like 6 to 8 week periods? Is he talking about any given minute or hour or day? I don't really know what he means by that. If he's talking about like this report where you look at it every 6 to 8 weeks and you take that total, then okay, I could see how that could be the case. He may also be referring to volcanoes that are not included on these reports, because they have, this website has criteria for what they follow and what they track. And it's right here under criteria and disclaimers. The weekly volcanic activity report does not necessarily include all volcanic activity. And maybe that's what he's referring to, I don't know, that occurred on Earth during the week. More than a dozen volcanoes globally have displayed more or less continuous eruptive activity for decades or longer, and such routine activity is typically not reported here. Okay, so he may be talking about those volcanoes that have been going on for a really long time, or he may be talking about these 6 to 8 week periods. That's something I don't know. And then it talks about like what they include on the report. Here's like the 4 criteria that was mentioned in the article that we were just reading. And then it kind of goes on. I'm not going to read that. Okay, but still. Okay, still. So it wasn't as exciting as I thought it was. And I think that's what other people are doing. They're like, whoa, there's 46 that's going off right now. Well, no, there's 46 over the last 6 to 8 weeks. But when you break it down by week, nothing really has been going on recently. Okay, nothing's really been going on. In fact, if anything, things have quieted down. I color coded these by tens. So if it's in the teens, I have it color coded green. If it's yellow, then it's in the 20s. And there are only two. There are only two that are in the 30s. One was November of last year, during the week starting November 9th. So this is actually now the number 2 spot. And then the largest one, or the one with the 1 week with the most eruptions on the weekly report, was March 30th of 2022. And that's in the number 1 spot. And when I say number 1 and number 2 spot, that's going back to the year 2020. Okay. I only went back to 2020 because this takes forever to do. And the way that I did it was, let me zoom back out. You pull up one of these reports like this. Okay. This is the week from the 8th of November to the 14th of November. I copy all of this right here, and then I paste it on a spreadsheet. I have an example of it right here. So like you paste it all right here, and you see how it pastes it the same way that it is on the website. Then I just look at the rows. The rows are already numbered, and that way you can quickly count how many there are. So in this case, there are 20. With this last paste that I did, there were 20. So I just take that number, and then I update this, and then I just go week by week by week by week, and it takes forever, and it's really monotonous, but it's worth it because there are some interesting things to note. So I decided to do an average. Okay, so if you go year by year and you average all these weeks, you'll notice there is something going on. So here's the year 2020. You can see that 2020 is mostly green according to my color coding. And so when I did the average of all those weeks, the average for any given week of eruptions taking place in the world, the average was about 17 eruptions per week in 2020. Okay. So 17, and then for 2021, it was actually about 21. So there was an increase from 2020 to 2021 from 17 to 21. So that seems like a pretty good increase. And then for 2022, it goes from 21 to 22 and a half. I'm going to bring this down to just 1 decimal point. So 22 and a half. So it increased even more. And then for this year, it is still at about 22 and a half. So this year and last year, it's about the same. So there has been an increase, generally speaking, in volcanic activity when you're comparing all these years and we break it down by weeks. There has been an increase. Let me zoom back out. Now, I would like at some point to go even further back so we have even better information, because for all I know, maybe things were worse as you go back in time. Maybe not. Or maybe there was a lot less activity. I have no idea. I'd have to go through and do the entire thing. But what I can tell you is using their website. Thankfully, they do have this table put together. And this breaks down eruptions by year. So instead of looking at it on a weekly basis, we're looking at it in a yearly basis. So let me zoom in, and I noticed something very interesting with this. Okay, so let's go. This goes back to 1960, and this row right here we're going to be just focusing mostly on this row right now. This one. Eruptions total. It's this third row. Eruptions total. So for this year, 2023, we're currently at 67. And last year, there were a total of 85, which we read in that article. So what does this column look like through time? Let's go to the very beginning. So you can see in the 60s, it looks like if you averaged it out, there'd probably be something like an average of like 59 earthquakes a year, or 59 eruptions a year, because it kind of like goes back and forth between the 50s and the 60s. So, somewhere in there, 50s and 60s. Okay. You look at the 70s, and you have your first 73 in 1977, but the rest of them pretty much the rest of that decade pretty much looks like the 60s, so like in the 50s and 60s, one in the 70s. In the 80s, you now have 2 that go up into the 70s, and then you have more that are in the 60s. You only have a couple that are in the 50s at this point. So you can see how things are like slowly. There's starting to be just slowly more eruptions over those 3 decades, the 60s, the 70s, and 80s. Nothing like really big or alarming or dramatic, but there was an increase. Okay, now let's look at the 90s. The 90s are probably comparable to the 80s. There's nothing like really too crazy going on there. But then, of all years, in 2004, you see your first some number in the 80s. In this case, 81. So going all the way back to 1960, you don't see any one year that gets into the 80s. The first year that gets into the 80s is 2004. Now, in case you missed that video, I should have had this pulled up. Dallin H. Oaks. Yeah, preparation for the second coming. In April of 2004, at the time, Elder Oaks in the Quorum of the 12 Apostles gave this talk called Preparation for the Second Coming. And he did something in this that I've never seen in any other General Conference talk. And I don't think any other General Conference talk exists that does the same thing. Otherwise, I promise you, I would have come across it by now. He goes through here and he actually lists the signs of the times. Okay? False Christs, false prophets, wars, rumors of wars, earthquakes, famine and pestilence, overflowing scourge, desolating sickness, iniquity abounding, the whole earth in commotion, men's hearts failing them. No other General Conference talk lists the signs of the times like this. And the rest of his talk is all about the second coming. And what's interesting is recently I actually played the first part of the talk. And when he first gets up to the pulpit, it's almost like he's having a moment where he's like, okay, here we go. I don't know if he receives special inspiration, very, very special inspiration to give this talk. He's not really one too much to talk about the second coming. If we go to, let me show you. If we go to prophets, phrase tracker, this is where I've tried to see how much the general authorities talk, or these prophets and apostles have talked about the second coming. And I've tracked these different phrases and terms in their General Conference talks. And you can see that President Nelson has talked the most about the second coming, except for the first few presidents of the church. But he has talked the most about the second coming. But Dallin H. Oaks, not so much. I have Dallin H. Oaks and then all the rest of them from Dallin H. Oaks to Ulysses Soares. And he has not used, for example, the term second coming very often. Only 3 times. And look, Quentin L. Cook has already said it 8 times. He is in the lead when it comes to the millennium. That's kind of interesting. He's even said the millennium more than President Nelson has. But anyway, he's typically not one to talk about the second coming too much, but he did do this talk that really stands out. So when he steps up to the podium, it seems like he's about to deliver something special. That's the way it looks to me, looking at his body language and his pausing and stuff like that. But anyway, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because we've already noted in another video, and I'll repeat some of it here, that since he gave this talk, the signs of the times have increased. It's like things moved into a different phase. So for one, we were just looking at volcanoes. So it's in 2004, for the first time since the 60s at least, maybe even before that, for the first time, you have a year where there's 81 eruptions. And then 49 over here, this is under the row for new eruptions. Okay, so if we're not counting up all the eruptions already taking place, but brand new eruptions, 49. You go back in time and you do not see anything really approaching 49. The closest that you get is 43 in 1967. But all these other years are pretty much in the 30s and 20s, and then a couple of them in the low 40s. And then suddenly there's a spike in 2004 with 49 new eruptions and 81 eruptions total. So it's like a new phase starts. And after that, 49 remains in the number 1 spot. There has not been another year before or since that time that has reached 49. As far as the total number of eruptions, that actually gets surpassed after 2004. In fact, the next year it's 83 and then 86. And then, it kind of stays in the 70s and 80s. And then in 2015, it gets to 90 total eruptions. And that's the number one year for this column, 2015. And then you have last year at 85. So the number one spot for total eruptions was 2015. In second place, you have a tie between 2016, 2008, and 2006. And then third place is last year with 85. So there are definitely more eruptions taking place. And it seems like things started to really take off from 2004 on, which is interesting because remember, let's see, make sure. Okay. Remember, it was the same thing with wildfires. I have searched high and low for as many places as possible. Sometimes you can't really find anything to confirm the largest wildfire in a certain place because it's a place that doesn't typically have wildfires. So there's like no stories even like talk about that fact. Other places do, places that have lots of wildfires like California, the Western United States, up in Canada and stuff like that. I have tried my hardest to find as many as possible. And this is how this spreadsheet turns out. Okay. I have one before 2004, the Wyoming Yellowstone fires of 1988. But everything else begins in 2004 with Alaska. Alaska had its worst wildfire season for the entire state, and it had its single largest wildfire, the Taylor Complex Fire. It starts in 2004, and since that time, all these locations have had their largest or deadliest or most destructive wildfires. It all starts with 2004. So with volcanoes, it starts in 2004. With wildfires, it starts in 2004. Let's leave that one for later. With earthquakes, okay, we're going to look at these two columns right here, E and F. These are tracking the death toll. Let's just look at column E, the total death toll. So you might notice that before 2004, yeah, you have people dying, and it's kind of like in the light pink and maybe sometimes in the medium pink. But then in 2004, the death toll goes way, 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 way up into the deep red. 228,766 people that die from earthquakes. Okay. And then the next few years are also very deadly compared to the previous decades. In the previous decades, you have one that it gets up into the up to 51,000. You have a couple in the 20,000s. But starting in 2004, with 228,000, you then have 89,000. Later on, you have 88,000. In 2010, you have 224,000. Okay. And then this year, 63,000. But it all starts in 2004. Okay. And then the last one that I have to show you, not as dramatic, but I think it's interesting when we're looking at the hurricanes. Hurricanes for the United States, between both the Pacific and the Atlantic. I've added all that up. And 2004, no, it's kind of, just an average year going back. 1990 was a bad year, so was 1992. But things take off the year after 2004 in 2005, where suddenly you have a bunch of hurricanes that year, spiking at 22. Again, not as dramatic as some of the other examples, but pretty significant. And if you're looking at category 5 hurricanes, it's 2005 that you get to the total number of 4. And I think it's in the number 1 spot, only tying with 2018. So 2005 was a notable year because of the number of category 5s and then just the total number of hurricanes. So it's another one that kind of starts at least after 2004. So hurricanes, earthquakes, wildfires, and volcanoes now. All those things start to pick up around that time. So I don't know if it has something to do with like some kind of like 20-year warning or something like that. But just note that next year is going to be 20 years since 2004. It's going to be 2024. And in 2024, we have all these other things that are like, lining up, you could say. President Nelson, once we get to January 14th, he's going to be in his 7th year as president of the church. Again, 7 is the number of perfection and completion. Could it be the completion of his presidency? Could it be the completion of, these 6,000 years? It's like just symbolically, look, we're at the end. I don't know. He is in his 100th year, and he's going to be in his 100th year until September 8th of next year. Until next General Conference, he will have given 40 talks, and 40 is a symbolic number. It's a number of cleansing and purification. So it'll remain like that until April General Conference. And then he will enter his 40th year as an apostle in April of next year. So if you go to the Wikipedia article, you'll see that he became an apostle April 7th. Interesting that it happened on the 7th. April 7th of 1984. So once he gets to that point next year, April 7th, he will then be in his 40th year as an apostle. And then all this talk about 2004, it's going to be 20 years. We're going to hit a 20-year mark. These are a lot of like even numbers and symbolic numbers, all happening at the same time, primarily in like early 2000 or early 2024. I find that mighty strange and something to look at and think about. And it looks like that's pretty much it, actually. Yeah, that worked out pretty well. That's everything that I wanted to cover. So, no, it doesn't seem that there are a lot of volcanoes going off right now, like this week specifically, but the eruptions have been increasing over time, year by year. And it's notable that they really started increasing since 2004, along with all these other things. Again, volcanoes, wildfires, earthquakes, and hurricanes. 2004. Okay, well, that's going to be it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.